Hello and welcome to today's special bonus episode of the WholeHearted Living podcast with your host Debs Thorpe. And I've decided that I'm going to be adding in some extra bonus episodes in addition to the twice weekly for when I'm wanting to communicate a bit more of a personal story or share some insight or lesson that I have personally recently experienced, and also to bring on board some guests in the future to really add a depth and, the real life examples of what it is to live the wholehearted life and what this journey of life is all about and how we go about navigating it. So I'm going to be sharing with you today what was probably one of the most traumatic experiences that I've probably ever gone through, and this happened very recently. So this happened last Thursday, so a few days ago, hence why there was a bit of disruption to the podcast lineup. So my apologies for that, for those of you waiting for the Thursday episode. Today I'm going to dive into what happened and really talk you through the strategies and the tools that I'm sharing with you on this podcast and how I bring them to life in my own experience. So last Monday, the last podcast episode that I recorded for you was all about how to deal with your inner critic. So this is something that we need to learn to master and really take charge of in our life. We have to start to become very good commanders of our mind. And so really, I believe in walking my own talk. So on Thursday, when it comes to recording the episode all about your inner nurturer and your cheerleader and how we go about really crafting this part of ourselves, I just felt really, really off. And rather than try and push through and maybe not give the energy to the podcast that I really wanted to, I was like, right, I'm going to go practice what I preach. I'm going to go and change my environment. I'm going to go for a walk, take myself out, recenter, reground myself, and then I will come back and record the episode. So it wasn't a great weather day here in Italy. It had been raining on and off for most of the day. It was raining a little bit when I headed out, but nothing too crazy. Got some water with me, and I took Bailey, my big dog. So he's just turned 12 years old. I've had him since he was a puppy. He is like the most fearless dog. He always has been ever since puppy classes. And he's done many hikes and treks with me. So this is not unfamiliar territory for him. So where I currently live in northern Italy, just off the edge of Lake Como, there I live pretty much in the middle of a national park. So it's really, really stunning. There's acres and acres to explore. And so I started the walk heading down to an area that I know quite well along the river. And rather than take my usual route, I decided to take a new track. Now, as we go through all of this, there's many points I could have made different decisions that would have led to different outcomes. Maybe this was the first one. So I started walking this new track. All was well. Bailey does really well off the lead. It gives him a chance to navigate all the different obstacles and the terrain much easier. So we were walking, all was fine. We navigated what was quite a technical bit where there was some stone steps. we were both absolutely fine with those. And I, just from looking at the signs and kind of knowing the area a little bit, I was like, I think if we keep following the river up, we're going to hit the small little village that's just above where I live, and then we can follow the road back down. So that was the plan. So we'd been walking for maybe 40 minutes, and we'd navigated this quite technical bit. We'd come to just like a normal track to walk along, and Bailey was maybe about 6 feet in front of me, and he literally within a split second lost his footing right at the edge of the track. And this track dropped into a ravine of about 40 feet. So I witnessed him lose his footing, slide all the way down. By the time I got to the point he fell, I couldn't see him. There was no sign of him. From what I could gather, there was potentially a little bit of a ledge before then it dropped into the river. Now, the river is pretty fast flowing, full of boulders. We just navigated the step section where there was a pretty hefty waterfall. So at this point, I'm panicking. My fight and flight survival is kicking in. I am shouting him. There's no sign of him. There's no sign of movement. I don't know whether he'd stopped at the ledge or whether he'd gone down into the river. It was just sheer panic at this stage. I looked down at where he'd slid in, and of course, I had that initial thought of, okay, I need to go down after him. And there was a really, really strong part of my brain that would not physically allow me to do that, because it was really dangerous. I weigh more than Bailey does. I mean, he's a big dog. He's about 37 kilos. I still weigh significantly more than that. And all I could think of was, this is slippy. If I go down and I can't stop myself, then I'm going into the river, and that could be me hitting my head on a boulder and passing out, or maybe I get down to where he is and neither of us can get back up. There is zero phone signal in this national park. So I had to make what was a really tough decision, which was to leave that area and get to higher ground to try and get a phone signal to phone David, my husband, who was back at the apartment, to bring the van down as close as he could get, where we'd got, ratchet straps and all different kinds of stuff, so that at least I could abseil down safely to get to Bailey if he'd got down there and he was injured or something had happened. So I, at that point, ran pretty much most of the way as far up as I could get. So I ended up hitting a small, tiny little village. And there I got enough phone signal to phone David and say, look, Bailey's fell, he's had an accident. I don't know where he is. We've got separated. Please bring the van to the closest point, which is like it's a little trout farm, agriturismo, and I'm going to try and make my way back down there. So I enter this village, and I'm thinking maybe David might be able to come and pick me up from there. However, it turns out that this was a village literally at the top of the mountain in the middle of nowhere. It would have taken David like an hour to drive there. I was like, well, I just need to figure this out. At this point, the rain came down really, really ferociously. I didn't even notice this really until the end, but I was absolutely soaked to the skin. My legs were absolutely on fire. So I'm kind of making my way up to this village, and as I enter the village, about 6 feet away from me, I'm confronted with a wild boar. Now, for anyone who has ever come more or less face to face with a wild boar, it's really scary. There's quite a lot of them in this national park, so we hear quite a lot of stories of people who have been attacked, and they're pretty ferocious. So I come face to face with this wild boar. It starts running, and I start running. And all I could think about was, okay, so now I'm going to get impaled by a wild boar. So I start running literally for my life at this point. I run into the family of wild boar. So now there's like 6 of them all running. All I can think about is just keep running. And I managed to find this like little shelter and kind of catch my breath for a second. No sign of the wild boar, thankfully. So I'm desperately at this point trying to find some signal, something that's given me some indication of where I can go to make my way back down into the park where I can meet up with David. So the only path that logically makes sense is to take the path back down where I saw the wild boar. So, at this point, the fear response is pretty hefty, I would say, that's going on in my body. But equally so, it's my only way down. So I just kind of said this little prayer of, please let the wild boar have moved on from that area. And I made my way down the track. So thankfully, no more wild boar. They had clearly kind of got probably as freaked out as I did and went and hid. And I ran back to the trout farm. So I saw the van. I assumed David had gone walking, trying to see whether he could find Bailey, and he was shouting him and calling him just to see whether he'd got free and found his way down the river or what had happened. So I waited at the van and I was like, right, we need to go back to the place that he fell, because, logically, if he has got injured or something's happened, that's where he's going to be. And so we grabbed some straps and some equipment from the van. Weirdly enough, we'd got one of those massive blue IKEA bags in there because we'd been doing some work, and Dave was like, look, take that, because that might come in as a handy kind of makeshift stretcher if we need to get him up out of anywhere. So we then started making our way back. I was retracing my steps, basically. At this stage, all I can think of is if he did end up in the river, I didn't see a way that he was going to survive. So, it's funny, the mind tricks that your brain plays on you, because as we were walking back, whenever you saw a black boulder in the river, we were double checking that wasn't Bailey's body. And it was just horrific. So retracing the steps, calling him, just seeing where, if he did get free, whether he was trying to also retrace his steps to get back to us. So we keep walking, and more or less to the meter of where he fell, he came walking up to us on the trail. I can't explain to you the sheer relief, confusion, elation of seeing him walk to us along the trail. I can't explain how he possibly got back up. It was a near vertical drop that he slid down, and I can't imagine what it took for him to find a route back up, or to have the sense to stay in the place where he last saw me. I lost all sense of time. I had no concept of myself in any of this. All I could think about was getting to him and making sure that he was okay, or that I could rescue him. And And we worked out afterwards that he was probably on his own for about an hour and 40 minutes. And living with not knowing what happened, is not an easy thing. And it's an absolute miracle. One, that he got back up, but he was not injured at all. I mean, we still had like the 40-minute walk back to the van, which he managed absolutely fine. He was a bit shaken, as you can imagine, and he was exhausted. I can't explain it. We get back, everybody's absolutely soaked, and I check Bailey over, sort of make sure he's okay. Lots of food, lots of rest. Checked him over. He was absolutely fine. And then I had to process the succession of decisions that had led to that happening. When I talk about the critic, I mean it can be immensely ferocious and dark at times. So there were points when I'd had to leave him to go and get a phone signal to alert David, that my brain was going, okay, well, there's a part of you that must have wanted him to die because you didn't go in after him. Like, you haven't been prepared to risk your life for his. There's people who jump in frozen lakes to rescue their dogs. You're not feeling anything. Why aren't you upset? Like, that shows how much you must not really care for him. So, like, when I say that critic voice can be really harsh and really dark, I know that because I lived that. Like, I understand the depths that critic can go to. So at that point, there's not a huge amount I can do with it, right? Other than go, this is not helpful in this time. All I need to do is stay focused on getting back to him and doing everything I possibly can to ensure that he's okay. So that kept me focused. Returning home when the adrenaline subsides and, you really start reassessing the event, I was very, very aware that in that moment, I had to choose a meaning from that event that served me going forward. Otherwise, I would continue to beat myself up and take myself to a dark place that was not going to serve me. It wasn't going to serve anybody. So, in order for me to process it and really be able to move on in a way that was empowering for everybody, I had to be real with the emotions. I was in shock. It was quite a traumatic event to go through. I was beating myself up, and so I had to be real with myself about the lessons and the things I'd do differently in the future. So this is the second time that I've had an incident in that park, and I have to be real with my naivety. I'm used to going and trekking and running all the trails in the UK, right? So I'm used to being on the edge of cliffs and all kinds of stuff, and doing so in not great weather conditions either. And I think I had this belief and this naivety that I'd be fine. There was nothing that was going to be that bad. What this national park is teaching me is that nature can be treacherous, and it can be an unforgiving and unrelenting place. And I really, really do need to think about that and take that into consideration. And also, when the weather's not good, not just going off on a new trail and, sticking to what's safe and what's familiar in that situation. So all I could do was keep reassuring myself that in the future I will choose differently, which means that I have taken the lessons from this and I can allow this to integrate into my experience. I don't need to keep replaying it. I don't need to keep bringing up all the what ifs. Fundamentally, everyone was safe. We were all okay, and I certainly would make different choices in the future. So that's the bit I needed to hold on to. I also chose to take a meaning from this that supported me in that moment. So, taking the miracle from this, right? I'm really holding huge gratitude for the whatever it was in the universe that was looking after both of us on that day. And I can't express the sheer amount of gratitude and appreciation I have for the fact that not only, did I find my way back to Bailey and he found his way back to me, but that he was totally unharmed in the process. I wanted to share this story with you because it's a vulnerable moment for me. I tend to keep the tough stuff fairly close to my chest, and that's not what a wholehearted life is, right? It's life happens. We end up in these situations that are not expected, that test us, and I want to be real and honest and truthful with you throughout that it's not all sunshine and happiness and rainbows and floating through life on a cloud. Like this, life happens, and this was an example of probably one of the more extreme things I've gone through recently, of just the balancing act of what my intention was for that walk, to go clear my head, reconnect with myself, be out in nature. I'm actually going to put this in a blog and show you some photos. I'd done a video recording literally probably 5 minutes before Bailey had his accident, and all I could think of was, oh my God, that could have been the last moments of last recordings of him. And I'll try and give you some idea of the terrain of the park and stuff, so that you can actually see it. And I'll put that into the blog on my website on debsthorpe.com. And yeah, not only was that totally unexpected, but also then how we choose to navigate these times in our life. And I've had the experience in the past where I think about like the burnout I had during my first business, and the torture that I kept myself in for months, because I chose to see that as some kind of epic failure of myself, of the trauma, the disconnection, and it kept me locked in that for so much longer than I needed to be. Had I have been able to like be real and integrate and be with the emotion and the shock and the trauma of all of it, but at the same time take the meaning and the story that was going to ultimately serve me and empower me. And one of the fundamental shifts that helped me really navigate my way out of burnout was being honest with what had led me to that place, and take the lessons that I was not going to allow that to happen again in the future. I'd learned the lessons, I'd changed, I was a different person, which meant that I would make different decisions in the future. And so that's really what I had to do with this situation. Now, I managed to do this pretty quickly because, this podcast is amazing for really highlighting the tools and the techniques that are used to navigate life. And so that was all very fresh in my mind. And I have the most amazing, loving, supportive husband who knew to not give me the lecture at the time, where his final words to me when I left the house to go on that walk were, please be really, really careful. It's wet. That's going to change the conditions of you walking. Like, you need to be really careful. He refrained on the lecture and just held me in so much love and so much comfort. And that is so, so healing. So, my lessons from all of this, and why I wanted to share this with you, is to really show the importance of us taking that director role when it comes to our mind. We have to assume that, because if we don't, it will just go off on its own tangent, and it's not necessarily going to support us. You need to be that commander of the mind that goes, okay, I maybe chose wrong. It was also just one of those fluke accidents. He could have lost his foot in it at any point on any walk that we've ever done in our life. And, it was just one of those accidents. I've taken the lessons from it, and I'm actually going to choose to be immensely grateful for the outcome. Bailey now has absolute legendary status in our household. It absolutely baffles me. He is the dog that will get caught up in his own lead and not know how to get out of it, and yet somehow figured his way back up and waited to the point where we all were, which was just absolutely amazing. And yeah, I'm very aware it could have been a very different outcome. So I just want to leave you with that, really. I wanted to share that story with you as an example of life, but also what it is to know what it is to be with and navigate the inner critic, bring that nurturing, compassionate voice in, holding yourself with so much love, so much compassion, and being with the gratitude and the lessons. So let me know how you've experienced this type of situation in your own life, how you've navigated it, and whether this has helped you to put into context what it is to, in real life, put these tools and techniques that I'm teaching you through this podcast into real life action. So I'd love to hear from you, and normal service resumes with the normal twice weekly podcasts over the next few weeks. Bye for now.